Hello, today I'm going to be talking to you about sexual harassment. First, I'm going to start with sexual harassment and how to identify it. These slides are done by Bianca Mangabai. Sexual harassment is a form of sexual discrimination. According to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature constitutes sexual harassment when the conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the individual. Some sexual behaviors that contribute to sexual harassment: verbal, non-verbal, or physical sexual behaviors, coerced sex, sexual jokes or innuendos, remarks about a person's body, turning discussions inappropriately to sexual topics, whistling or catcalls, looking a person up and down or staring in a sexually suggestive manner, invading someone's personal space or blocking her or his path, sexually explicit visuals such as pinups, suggestions of sexual intimacy, repeated requests for dates, unwanted letters, electronic mail, or other computer communications. Circumstances in which sexual harassment can occur. Victim and harasser do not have to be of different genders. Both can be men, both can be women, or both can be of different genders. Similarly, as with sexual assault, women can be perpetrators. The harasser can be a supervisor, an agent of the employer, a supervisor in another area, a coworker, or a non-employee. The victim does not have to be the person that is directly harassed. It can be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. Unlawful sexual harassment can occur without economic injury to or discharge of the victim. The harasser's conduct can be unwelcome and must be unwelcome. Two types of sexual harassment. Quid pro quo, meaning this for that. An example of this form of sexual harassment occurs if a teacher or any school employee stipulates that your grade or participation on the team will be based on whether you submit the unwelcome sexual conduct. This abuse of authority is illegal regardless of whether you refuse sexual demands or submit to them. Hostile environment. Sexual harassment is verbal, physical, or visual forms of harassment that are sexual in nature, sufficiently severe, persistent, or persuasive, and unwelcome fall under the category of hostile environment. A single severe incident such as a sexual assault could create a hostile environment. More commonly, a hostile environment is created through a series of incidents. That concludes sexual harassment and how to identify it. Next, I'm going to talk about sexual harassment in college campuses. These presentations were made by Amber Nicole Rose Garrett. Sexual harassment of students is illegal. A federal law of the Education Amendments in 1972 prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex, including sexual harassment in educational programs and activities. Sexual harassment will make you feel uncomfortable. Whether it is faculty versus student or student versus student, sexual harassment on college campuses can be committed by both sexes, but is for the most part committed against women by men and creates an environment of intimidation that weakens the student's ability to thrive and learn. Reporting it from happening again. Few college students report sexual harassment to authorities. Only 7% of college students say they reported sexual harassment to a faculty member or college representative. It is the college and university's responsibility of the educational institution to provide the best learning environment possible, allowing all students to feel safe and to benefit from learning experiences that surround them. Sexual harassment may be unknown to the public, but it's known to you. Sexual harassment of any kind should never be taken lightly, especially as college campuses are where people go to grow and develop. This development should be hindered by the nauseating act of sexual harassment. By acknowledging that this is a common occurrence and educating students, faculty, and staff on campus, sexual harassment educational institutions can show their zero tolerance of sexual harassment of any kind on their campuses. And this concludes sexual harassment in the college campus. Sexual harassment in the workplace. These presentation slides were done by Jamise Frazier. Awareness. It is imperative that you are aware of the problem that exists. Know the broad definition of sexual harassment. Always govern yourself accordingly in any form of communication. Company protection. In recent years, the silence of sexual harassment has lessened in the workplace. The tolerance of behavior makes a company just as guilty as the offender in the eyes of the law. Hence the stiff penalties and millions of dollars companies have had to pay. It is due to the fact that companies have done proactive things to prevent and discourage such behavior. Companies are protecting themselves to be preventive of financial liability. Companies give intense training and enforce strict zero-tolerance policies on sexual harassment. Victims. Victims often feel that their self-esteem is shot. In some cases, can only be treated by therapy. They have emotional scars. Their professional image is insecure. Imagine going to a job and feeling like a prisoner doing that thing that you were once passionate about. The offenders. To be an offender speaks for itself. It can land you in the unemployment line as well as under both civil and in some cases criminal legal situations. Your professional image is, as well as financial well-being are at stake when failing to make wise judgment calls and governing yourself accordingly. Civil or legal prosecution, severe financial loss. Protect yourself. Know the laws and policies. Watch how and what you communicate. It is in everyone's interest to educate themselves on this matter, not because they would intentionally sexually harass anyone, but because many who have identified as the harasser are individuals who had no intentions of being offensive. This concludes sexual harassment in the workplace.
Hi, my name is Haley Humapau, and first I'm going to be presenting Kiana Marshall's project, which is Sexual Harassment and the Internet. When many people think of sexual harassment, they think that it only has to occur face-to-face. However, this is definitely not the case. Because of the big technology boom, the Internet is now the new platform for people to become victims. First, let's go over the definition of sexual harassment on the Internet. This is when a person receives any gender or sex-related comment or an image that is viewed that causes the individual to experience psychological discomfort. This can be stress-related, a feeling of awkwardness, or feeling like you're being offended. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the different types of internet mediums where one can receive sexual harassment, the different types of sexual harassment that can take place on the internet, and last, ways to prevent sexual harassment. Because there are so many different mediums on the internet, someone can be easily targeted as a victim. They can be harassed in chat rooms, various social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and many more. Also through instant messaging, emails, and various message boards. Because many people nowadays have smartphones, people can also be harassed when they're away from the computer. For example, hostile work environments can be created when employees send distasteful or unwanted text messages to their coworkers. Now, let's go over the different types of sexual harassment that one can receive while on the internet. First is active verbal sexual harassment. This is when someone receives an inappropriate sexual message that contains offensive language towards someone. For example, someone can receive a message on Facebook that suggests that they want them to perform a sexual favor. Second is passive verbal sexual harassment. This is not towards just one person, but instead towards a multitude of people. This most likely comes through the form of spam emails. Of course, they are offensive in language and sexual. Third is active graphic gender sexual harassment. This comes in the form of inappropriate, usually pornographic images or video posted on websites. A perfect example of this is Anthony Weiner's sex scandal. He thought that what he was doing was not sexual harassment. However, the suggestive picture that was posted on Twitter highly suggests that what he was doing was clearly sexual harassment. The last is passive graphic gender sexual harassment. This is similar to active gender sexual harassment. However, the receival of offensive pictures are not sought out. Instead, they come in the form of pop-up windows. Last, let's look at the ways to prevent and avoid sexual harassment on the internet. From 2009 to 2011, more than 30,000 sexual harassment claims were filed in the U.S. Unfortunately, anyone can become a victim. Be aware of the signs. If pictures, jokes, favors seem to be increasingly offensive, make sure that you know your rights and your policies. Keep a paper trail. Record the comments that people are sending you. And last, report. Report this to the host website, like file a complaint with Facebook, and even bring it up to higher law enforcement. That concludes the presentation on sexual harassment and the internet. Now I'm going to be presenting Ebony Higgins' project on sexual harassment and how it relates to post-traumatic stress disorder. As we know, like Bianca stated, men and females are both victims of sexual harassment. There are many cases where perpetrators get away with their actions because the person being harassed is unaware of what sexual harassment is. Unfortunately, this happens to someone every day. People who are harassed are at a large risk of receiving post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. People receive PTSD often when they experience an extremely terrifying or distressing event. It is something so tragic it's impossible to forget. Sexual harassment can not only affect one physically, but mentally as well. The incident constantly replays in their mind, and they endure fearsome thoughts and emotional numbness every second that they live. It's not really what is wrong with you, but it turns into what has happened to you. PTSD is often associated with war veterans, but it can also be applied to being sexually harassed. People with PTSD can relive their awful experience through nightmares. They can have anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, be easily startled by sudden noises or movements, lose interest in things they usually enjoyed, and lose all affection. They can also feel irritable and display aggression. As you can see in these pictures, these people are experiencing extreme anxiety and depression. PTSD affects people's brains and peace of mind. With a combination of therapy and medication, individuals living with this disorder due to sexual harassment can in time live somewhat normal lives. This concludes the presentation on sexual harassment and how it relates to PTSD. Now I'm going to present how one can cope with sexual harassment. This was completed by Latanya Ames Sheard. As we know, sexual harassment can be conveyed in many different forms, through inappropriate conversations, asking for sexual favors, inappropriate touching or brushing, and basically anything that makes someone feel uncomfortable, humiliated, or offended. Today I'm going to talk to you about how you can cope with sexual harassment in the workplace, while you're at college, and even while you're online. First, in the workplace. It is shown that women will more likely report incidents of sexual harassment than men. The likelihood of victims reporting incidents, if it is a coworker, is 40 to 60%. If it is a supervisor, it bumps down to 36%. Let the harasser know that the advances are unwanted and you want them to stop. File a report with the HR department. Most importantly, document all interactions that reflect that you are being harassed. Next, on the college campus. File a complaint on campus and be aware of the security department. Have a secure group of friends. Avoid situations of isolation. Never be alone, and especially do not be alone with your harasser. As we know, a lot of college students do go out on the weekends to various bars and house parties. When you're out, be leery of anyone trying to get you intoxicated. Do not engage in excessive drinking or drug use. This impairs your ability to fight someone's advances, and it may even come off as wanted. And last, be aware of your surroundings. Know that you are in a safe environment with friends that you can trust. Last, online harassment. We know now that this can be material posted about a person, or a person can receive this material. Harassment can be reported to a host website, like complaining to Facebook. Filters can be placed on emails to block or filter the harasser's messages out. Be mindful of the pictures and content posted online that can be copied or used in a negative way. Also, make sure that you know the laws and guidelines in your state. Not each state prohibits harassment that deals with online. Last, let's look at the resolutions. Whether you're at work, school, or online, make sure you file a complaint within that setting or with higher law enforcement. Keeping quiet does not help the harasser. It gives the impression that his advances or her advances are welcomed. Have a support system, someone you can confide in. Seek counseling. This can be counseling that is group counseling or one-on-one. And if it is extremely troubling or the harasser just doesn't stop, think about filing a lawsuit. This concludes LaTanya Ames Sheard presentation on how to cope with sexual harassment. Sexual harassment should never be taken lightly.
So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it very informative.